Hey guys, welcome to Indie Game Hustle. My name is Charles, and in this video, we're going to continue with building out our character mechanics. And in this particular video, we're going to start looking at making our character actually have some type of action when they're swinging a weapon. Our ultimate goal, really, we want to be able to have our player swing a weapon. It interacts with an enemy and it hits the enemy, it deals damage, and if of course the enemy hits us, it will deal damage as well to the player. Okay, but before we get ahead of ourselves, let's just kind of explore how we can set up our player with just some of the basics of the melee module. Okay, all right, so in the last video, I believe I've already had you download or install the melee module, but let's just take a quick look. What you want to do is head over to Game Creator at the top and click on Module Manager. If you should have that, and you should see Module Manager here. Okay. Now, the next thing I want you to do is above it, you see where it says Melee Examples. Go ahead and enable, install that. It should, I believe it'll be somewhere around here, but enable. And if it needs an update, just go ahead and update it. It should be fine. Okay. Now, by downloading the Melee Examples, it kind of gives us, I would call, a head start on kind of understanding how the Melee module works. It's really a blessing to be able to have Melee examples and things like that. So we're just going to take a look at some of the basics of it. All right, so to get to that, basically the Melee module is made up of a few different components. There's a component that the player needs to have on them. There's a component the enemy needs to have. And there's about 3 different objects that need to be created for it to all kind of work together, at least initially. Okay. So those 3 different objects are called the, I believe it's called the clip. It's a weapon and a shield. Let me show you that as opposed to just talking about it. I'm going to go in the assets folder down to where it says plugins. I'm going to click on Game Creator. I'm going to click on Melee Examples, click on Assets. And the first one, the folder called Melee Clips. In here you have a clip. Okay, and let's just click on My Attack 1. Now, when you look in here, it looks really nice. First of all, it just looks super organized and really well done. On the right side here, you have a few different components that make this up. You have animation, motion, effects, combat, and then you have this area down here, which we'll go into detail about once we have a weapon in our hands. But this will make up you swinging your weapon and also your weapon being able to actually attack your enemy. Okay. All right. And then, so this is just one of the first key elements of the Melee module. I'm going to go back to assets, and then I'm going to click on weapons. And in here we have sword weapon and sword shield. And these are the other 2 elements that we're going to need to make everything work. And so as opposed to me just talking about it, let's just kind of start building out our player. So the first thing I'm going to do is select my player, and the player is going to need a component. Now it looks like I already had added this component to our player, and it's called the character melee. So to add this, you just go to add component and you type in melee, character melee. Okay, now I added 2. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of that. So you only need 1 on your player. Okay, and so we're gonna need that first. And then the next thing we want to do, and let's go ahead and open up our player. And inside of our player, of course, we have our different mechanics, and we've been building these out over a few videos now. So what I'm going to do is right click, and I'm going to go to Game Creator. I'm going to go to Trigger, and of course, I'm going to name this. Okay. So for now, I think I'm just going to name this melee attack. And maybe we can change this later, so that's fine. Okay. So we have melee attack. Now, what I could do is actually, let's see here. What I think I'll do is I'm going to delete this, and then I'm going to go back. I'm going to go to just like this. I'm just going to do, I just basically created an empty game object, and I'm just going to name it attack. Okay. And then underneath here, there's going to be a few different triggers we need to start with. Okay. So the first trigger we're going to look at is we're going to need a trigger to draw the weapon, right? So think about it logically, right? When you have your player, of course, when we play a game, we just hit a button and he swings and everything works. But realistically, we need to tell the player what to do. It's like, like coding. Like the computer doesn't really do it on its own. Like you coded it that way, like it does it because you said do it that way. So we need to first say draw a weapon. Okay, so let's start there. So this trigger is going to draw a weapon. So let me go ahead and rename this. Draw weapon. Okay. And we're going to do an action. And of course, that action is going to be created as a child of the trigger. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. And in your actions, I'm just going to go down here. Now, remember, when you add the module, the melee module, when you add any module, it's going to present you a new set of actions, which is wonderful. And so in here, we're going to have a folder now called melee. And I'm going to click on this, and there's a bunch of different actions here. We have character defense, pose, or poise. We have attack, blocking, shield, draw weapon, etc., etc., etc. So we have a few different things here that we can start with. So we need to draw a weapon, okay? Now, here now we need to select who's going to draw the weapon. Our player is going to draw the weapon. Draw previous weapon, and we're not going to use that just yet, but that will come in handy later. And now below, it says melee weapon and melee shield. Now you can guess what we're going to put in here. It's going to be weapon and shield, okay? And if you were to click on this box and open it up, this is going to give you the option for the melee weapon, and this is going to give you the option for the shield, okay? All right, so right off the bat, it's asking, this action is saying, what do you want to draw? Okay, so what we're going to go ahead and do is go ahead and select the shield. So I'm going to hit this, and it looks like I'm just going to go ahead and put this in here. Now, just mind you, we didn't create this particular sword weapon. This is the one that comes built into the examples. And I'm only doing this right now just so that we can get an understanding of how to build this out. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move that there. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the shield. All right, perfect. All right, so now that we have these, let's go ahead and hit play and see what happens. So I'm going to hit play. All right. So what we have here is we have our player. He immediately goes into a pose. And if you notice, there's a weapon floating around him. Okay. All right, great. All right, and that's good. That's what we want. We want exactly that. And the reason you see this is because we are drawing a weapon and a shield. And the reason that our player is in a different pose is because that weapon has a particular, how do you call it? Like a particular character state that has that pose. So what's great about this is different weapons can give you different poses. And so, you don't have to worry about like, oh, how do I switch poses based on this weapon or that weapon? So if you have like a bow and arrow, or if you have an axe or a two-handed weapon, you can set up a certain character state or locomotion to go with that weapon, and that's wonderful. And so that just shows you what's going on here. Of course, the weapon is in the scene, and so you know that that weapon is coming from this prefab here. It's on the right hand. Now, of course, it's not positioned correctly, and that's because we need to change the offset of this sword, okay? And we will do that here in a moment, but that's just showing you that's what that is affecting. That's affecting the offset. Now, you may have not heard, I think I have the sound turned off, but you may have not heard the drawing or sheath sound when the game started, but there was a sound here, okay? And so that would have started immediately when that happens. So let's go ahead and take a look at some other things. All right, so we were able to draw a weapon, okay? So the next thing we need to do, let's see here. So what we're going to do now is do the actual attacking or the swinging of the weapon. So just let's continue to think this through, right? So you have your draw weapon, and so naturally we need to use the weapon. So I'm going to right click on my empty trigger here, attack. I'm going to go ahead and go to game creator. I'm going to go to trigger. I'm going to rename this weapon to attack, right? And so this attack, we need a button to press for this attack to work. Okay, so we don't want when the game starts you to start attacking. So let's go ahead and set an input for this. So I'm going to go change trigger, go input, and I'm going to select on key down, and I'm going to put it to mouse 1. And mouse 1 is going to be the right button, the right button on your mouse, just for now at least, until we start thinking about, you know, all of the different control schemes and that sort of stuff and using controllers and that. For now, I'm just going to set it to mouse 1, okay? All right, so the next thing I want to do is go ahead and create an action, okay? And of course that action is created here, so I'm going to rename it, or at least get rid of this here. And let's go back to our player. All right, so on this action, we're going to go action, we're going to go to melee. And what we're going to do, before we did draw weapon, but now we need to do input melee attack. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit that. All right, perfect. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail in terms of key, but if you're following along and you hit play, then you should see what happens. So I'm going to go hit play. If I hit my mouse 2 or my mouse 1, now you can see that our player is attacking, and that's great. That's exactly what we want. But then you have to ask, well, how does this all work? And we're just putting stuff in there, and there's no explanation as to why that's working like that. And now I'm going to get into that. So what I'm going to do now, we have draw weapon and we have the action for attacking. Now let's actually take a look at those two components, these here. And I'm going to first take a look at the weapon. Okay. So if you go into melee, go to draw weapon, click on your action and click on sword weapon. And then let's actually click on the sword weapon here so we can change our inspector. Now, if you start at the very top, we have the weapon name sword, we have the weapon description. That's all fine and dandy. But we have a shield. That's great. We have the character state, and that's going to change again that's going to change the character's basically idle and all types of things basically based on when this weapon is actually drawn. Okay, so if this weapon is active, this locomotion state will take effect. Okay. Of course, we have our sword weapon, and then we have our right hand. We have the different position. I'm going to go all the way down to the part where it says combo creator. Now this is ingenious, right? So this is just completely awesome. If you take a look, of course, at my actions and it said key A, and if you notice all of these are listed as key A. Now I can change this to a different key and that's fine, but for now it's called key A. Now what we can do, for instance, is if I hit this plus key, this gives me the ability to add additional things. I don't need to do that. I'm actually going to remove it. But right now, for instance, let's just look at the very basic combo. If you go down where it says condition none, melee clip attack 1, then below attack 2, and then attack 3. And then underneath that, you have enabled one true, true, and true. Now, if you see it has an A, 2 A's, and then 3 A's, that basically means if we hit the attack button 3 different times consecutive, you will perform this particular combo. Now let's go up one where it says input forward. There's a melee clip with a special attack, right? With a special animation called stinger. If we input forward and hit the attack button, we're going to perform that particular attack, okay? Same thing here. This one here where it says input backwards. If we hit the backwards button at the same time as we hit the input A or the key input that we set up, it's going to perform a different attack. Air, just imagine, same thing. After perfect block, we haven't done any blocks yet, but if you were to block something and then you attack, of course, it's going to perform a counter attack clip that you would have created. Okay. I know I'm kind of going on, but I want to really make sure that it makes sense. And so let's dive into that. So the first thing I want to do is hit the play button. All right, so let's take a look at this. All right, and you might have heard the sound because I was able to go ahead and turn on a few things on the computer. Let's see here. So as you can see, the sword is, of course, still doing that. So what we're going to do first is change the position of where the sword is in relation to the hand, and specifically the right hand. So let's go ahead and do that. Now I'm going to hit play. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to duplicate these 2 items so that I don't mess with these, okay? So, because these are kind of the ones that are built into the example, so if you ever need a reference, you want to make sure that these were the originals. So I'm going to go ahead and do a Control D on the sword weapon, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the shield. And then on the weapon one, I'm going to say base, and then to do the same thing to the shield and get rid of the 1. All right, great. All right, so now that we have those 2 made, what we're going to do is go back to our draw weapon action, and I'm going to switch these out, okay? So I'm going to take the sword shield and put it in the shield slot. Take the sword weapon, put it in that slot, and so now these are free, and these are what we're going to utilize, and the things that we're going to change, okay? All right, so let's see here. The sword weapon. All right, so in terms of the position and offset, let's go ahead and hit play and see what we get here. So I want to hit play. And I see that's where our weapon is currently. So I'm going to move the game object a little bit, the game window over, and I want to select this sword, okay? And so when you select the sword, you'll notice, of course, it's going to be, in terms of the hierarchy, it's going to be off of the right hand here, okay? And if you select the sword, that's the sword, but we don't want to move the sword. What we want to do is move the clone, okay? And that's the current position that the clone is at. So we want to manipulate this. So we can actually drag this object in the actual scene here. So I'm going to take this and just move it. Okay. And I'm going to move it up into the hand. And then I'm going to rotate it. Okay. It's not too bad. And I'll move it up into the hand a little bit more. Looks pretty good. What do you think? I think that's pretty good. One thing I think I'll do is I'll move it like he's halfway on it as opposed to at the end. All right, cool. I think that will work. And just make sure that you're not selecting this. Make sure you're selecting the sword weapon clone. Okay. All right. So before we actually get out of this play mode, I'm going to use the tool that I always use. Is going to be the snipping tool. And the snipping tool is here. And I'm just going to copy or kind of like a screen grab. And I'm going to move that off to the side and I'm going to hit play. And hopefully this works. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this stuff. And I'm going to go back to my weapon and I'm going to change these values, this offset value. Okay. So I'm going to change the value to 0.0046. Now this is, of course, is going to be a little different than your player if you're using a different character than I am. And I'm going to do 0.00. And for rotation, let's see if we do this. We do -2.368. And I could probably be okay with just doing like 8.5, but I'm just going to go ahead and add the little 3 on there and sort of to make it exactly what the value it gave me. And I'm going to do that. All right, cool. So that should work. Let's go ahead and take a look. And I'm going to hit play. All right, and you should have heard the sound because I made sure my computer was on. And we're all good to go. So I'm going to move my game view back here. All right, great. So now we have a player. And our player is doing what he's supposed to be doing. And of course, when I hit the right mouse button, mouse number 1, we have everything we need here. All right, and that looks good. I mean, that's what we're looking for. And so what I was talking about in terms of the combo creator, we have our player, right? And so we did everything to get him set up. Now let's look at the combo creator one by one. After perfect combo, after perfect block, of course I can't show you that one just yet, but on air I can. So on air has a condition, and the condition is if the player is in the air and you hit the key A, it's going to perform the melee clip special hammer fall, right? Does that make sense? So I'm going to jump in the air, and then I'm going to hit the input button that we set up on our attack trigger. Okay, so jump, hammer fall, jump, hammer fall, double jump, hammer fall. You see? So that's how that works. Now let's look at input backwards. The condition is input backwards, hit the key, input A, perform special backslash. All right, so I'm going to, at the same time on the keyboard, I'm using WASD. So that back button right now is the S because I'm facing forward in terms of the camera view. So I'm going to hit S in the attack button at the same time and see if we can get that right. Boom. Okay. So that is that backslash. And so I'm facing this way, I'm going to hit the W key. All right. And so if I'm hitting this way, I'm going to hit the D key and vice versa. All right. Perfect. And so that's what that means by input backwards. The input backwards is based on the character's direction. Okay. All right, and we have forward, and so you can already assume what we're going to do. So we're going to do condition input forward. Special attack is going to be stinger with the input key. See? This way, this way. All right, perfect. And so as you can see, that's nice. Now, when we get to these three, this is attack 1, 2, and 3. So if we hit attack A, if we hit input A, we only get that. If we hit A twice, we get that. And if we hit A 3 times, we're going to get that. 2, 3. Perfect. All right. Nice. Well, I hope that all makes sense. I want to leave us there. We'll continue this in the next video because there's a little bit more to cover, of course, with the melee. All right. So I'll see you guys in the next video. We will continue to discuss the different combos and all types of different things with this. So, all right. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. For the next set of videos, I'll be releasing one every day at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So, to stay up to date on the latest 3D platforming tutorial, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support, you can find me on Patreon, or of course, you can hit me up on Discord. I like to talk about whatever project you guys are working on. Of course, thanks for hanging with me. Your support is always appreciated. As always, remember, never give up and keep moving forward. Peace.